The air in the corporate office was thick with ambition, a palpable energy that buzzed like the fluorescent lights overhead. As Maya stepped through the glass doors of Apex Solutions, her heart raced with a mix of excitement and anxiety. She had dreamed of this moment for years, landing a job at a prestigious firm where her ideas could flourish and her career could take flight. But as she took her first steps into the polished lobby, a sinking feeling tugged at her stomach. Maya had always been determined to rise above the challenges she faced as a woman of color in the corporate world. With a degree in business administration and a track record of internships, she was ready to prove herself. Yet little did she know the path ahead would be littered with hurdles, starting with her new boss, Mr. Carson. Mr. Carson was a tall man with a booming voice and an imposing presence. He ruled his department with an iron fist, known for his sharp tongue and ruthless management style. During her orientation, the HR manager had warned the new hires about his tendency to micromanage, but no one had prepared Maya for the undercurrent of racism that seemed to pervade his leadership. Remember, hard work is what gets you noticed around here, he had said with a smirk during the welcome meeting, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the diverse faces in the room. But not everyone is cut out for the grind. Just be sure you're ready to work twice as hard to earn your place. Maya felt the weight of his gaze linger on her a moment too long, the implication clear. She was determined not to let his comments derail her ambition. With a deep breath, she made her way to her desk, her mind racing with plans to excel in her new role. The first few days were a whirlwind of introductions and training sessions. Maya was eager to learn, poring over project details and company protocols, but it quickly became apparent that Mr. Carson had little patience for questions. He threw projects at her with barely any context, expecting her to deliver results without guidance. She often stayed late, trying to meet his relentless demands while also battling her growing frustration. One afternoon, as Maya was hunched over her computer, her colleague James swung by her cubicle. "You all right?" he asked, a concerned look on his face. "Just trying to keep up," she replied, forcing a smile. "It's a lot to take in." James shook his head, leaning in closer. "You've got to watch yourself. Mr. Carson has a reputation for pushing his employees hard, especially those who don't fit his mold." "What do you mean?" Maya asked, her interest piqued. "He doesn't take kindly to people like us," James said, lowering his voice. "I've seen him treat others poorly just because of their background. It's infuriating." Maya's heart sank. She had hoped to find a supportive environment, but the reality was far from what she envisioned. As the days turned into weeks, she watched as Mr. Carson routinely overlooked qualified candidates for promotions, favoring those who mirrored his own image. It was disheartening, but Maya refused to back down. Determined to make a mark, she spent every evening reviewing company policies and industry trends, crafting proposals that showcased her innovative ideas. Yet every time she presented her work to Mr. Carson, he dismissed her suggestions with a wave of his hand. "Nice try, but we need results, not theories," he would say, his tone dripping with condescension. Each rejection stung more than the last, and the pressure of the job began to wear her down. Maya felt the weight of not only her aspirations, but also the responsibility to challenge the status quo. She wasn't just fighting for her career, she was fighting for representation and recognition in a company that seemed determined to stifle her. Then came the day that would change everything. Maya arrived at work to find an urgent email from Mr. Carson summoning her to his office. As she walked down the hallway, her palms were sweaty, her heart pounding. The walls felt like they were closing in as she approached the imposing door, its heavy frame a barrier between her hopes and the reality she was about to face. "Come in," Mr. Carson's voice boomed from inside, and she pushed the door open, bracing herself for yet another round of criticism. "Close the door," he instructed, not looking up from his papers. Maya complied, feeling a knot tighten in her stomach. "Your numbers from the last project were subpar," he said, finally glancing at her. His expression was unreadable, a mix of irritation and something deeper. "I need you to step it up. We're on a tight deadline, and I can't afford to babysit you." "I understand, Mr. Carson," Maya replied, keeping her voice steady. I'll make sure to improve my performance. See that you do, he snapped. And don't let me catch you slacking off. There are plenty of people who would kill for your job. Maya clenched her fists at her sides, fighting the urge to speak up. She wanted to voice her frustration, to call out the unfairness of his expectations, but she knew that any hint of dissent could cost her everything. Instead, she nodded and left his office, determination simmering beneath her surface. As she returned to her desk, Maya couldn't shake the feeling of injustice. She was driven, ready to prove herself, yet she was being pushed into a corner by someone who thrived on intimidation. But instead of allowing it to crush her spirit, she felt a fire ignite within. She would find a way to turn this situation around. She had to. After all, she wasn't just another employee at Apex Solutions. She was here to make a difference, to challenge the status quo, and maybe, just maybe, to become a voice for those who felt silenced. That night, as she sat alone in her small apartment, Maya made a decision. She would dig deeper into the company's culture, understand the dynamics at play, and uncover the truth behind the facade of success. Little did she know, her journey would lead her down a path filled with unexpected revelations and, ultimately, a confrontation that would change the course of her career forever. With renewed resolve, she opened her laptop and began her research. The fight was just beginning. The following weeks at Apex Solutions felt like a relentless roller coaster ride, with Maya hanging on for dear life. Each day brought fresh challenges, and the weight of Mr. Carson's expectations hung over her like a storm cloud. She worked tirelessly, often arriving early and leaving late, but no matter how hard she pushed herself, it never seemed to be enough for her boss. One Friday afternoon, the office buzzed with excitement. A major project was about to launch, and the atmosphere was electric. Maya felt a surge of adrenaline. This was her moment to shine. She had poured her heart into the project, meticulously preparing a presentation that she believed would impress not only Mr. Carson, but also the upper management. Hey Maya, are you ready for the big presentation? James asked as he passed her cubicle, a hint of encouragement in his voice. I think so, she replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. I just hope Carson doesn't tear it apart. James' expression turned serious. Just remember, your ideas are worth it. Don't let him intimidate you. Maya nodded, appreciating his support. But as the clock ticked closer to the meeting, her anxiety grew. The conference room was filled with her colleagues and the higher-ups, and the moment she stepped in, she could feel Mr. Carson's scrutinizing gaze on her. As she began her presentation, the nerves started to fade and her passion for the project shone through. The slides flickered on the screen, each one a testament to her hard work. She spoke confidently, detailing her innovative strategies and the potential impact on the company. But just as she started to gain momentum, Mr. Carson interrupted her. This is all very nice, Maya, but let's be real. What you're proposing is too ambitious for our current capabilities. Maya's heart sank, but she pressed on, determined not to let his words deter her. I believe that with a few adjustments, we can implement these changes effectively. It's about pushing the boundaries. Pushing the boundaries, he scoffed. We need results, not pipe dreams. I suggest you focus on what's feasible. The words cut deep, and she felt a wave of humiliation wash over her. The room fell silent, and Maya's cheeks flushed as she realized how her colleagues were watching, some with pity, others with uncertainty. Thank you, Maya. That'll be all, Mr. Carson said, dismissing her with a wave of his hand. She forced herself to smile, despite the disappointment crushing her inside, and left the conference room feeling defeated. That evening, as she sat at her desk, the familiar weight of frustration settled in. She had given it her all, only to be shot down once again. She glanced around the office, noting the silence that hung in the air as her coworkers wrapped up their tasks. James caught her eye and offered a reassuring nod, but it did little to lift her spirits. Days turned into weeks, and Maya found herself drowning in a cycle of overwork and disillusionment. Mr. Carson's demands escalated, and he often unleashed his frustrations on her, blaming her for any perceived shortcomings. You need to be quicker, Maya. This isn't a charity. I don't have time to hold your hand, he barked during one of their heated discussions. With every cruel remark, the fire within her started to dim. She questioned her worth, battling a growing sense of hopelessness. But amid the darkness, a spark of determination remained. She refused to let Mr. Carson's behavior define her. One afternoon, as Maya was buried under a mountain of paperwork, she overheard a conversation between two colleagues, Sarah and Tom, in the break room. Did you hear about Jason? He got passed over for promotion again. Carson doesn't think he's management material because of his background, Sarah whispered, her voice laced with disbelief. That's ridiculous. He's one of the best analysts we have, Tom replied, frustration evident in his tone. But you know how Carson is. He's not exactly open-minded. Maya's heart raced. She had heard rumors about Mr. Carson's biases, but hearing it confirmed sent chills down her spine. She felt a surge of anger rise within her. Jason deserved better, just like so many others who had been overlooked because of their race or background. Later that week, an incident occurred that would prove to be the breaking point for Maya. It was a particularly stressful day. Mr. Carson had been in a foul mood, barking orders and criticizing every little detail of her work. After yet another heated exchange, Maya stormed out of his office, her heart pounding with rage. As she passed by the lobby, she noticed a commotion near the entrance. A young black woman, visibly upset, was arguing with the receptionist, who seemed equally distressed. Maya approached, her curiosity piqued. The woman, Sarah, was pleading her case, explaining that she had an appointment for an interview but had been denied entry. I'm sorry, but Mr. Carson said to keep the office secure. The receptionist replied, shaking her head. Maya's blood boiled. What do you mean? She has an appointment. The receptionist looked flustered. I know, but he told me not to let anyone in who isn't on the list. It's just, he's been so tense lately. Ignoring her instincts, Maya stepped forward. I'll take responsibility for her. Mr. Carson can't just decide who gets in and who doesn't. The receptionist hesitated but eventually relented, allowing Sarah to enter. As they walked toward the conference room, Maya could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on her. Thank you so much, Sarah said, her eyes shining with gratitude. I've been waiting for this opportunity for months. Of course, Maya replied, feeling a sense of solidarity. Everyone deserves a fair chance. But as they approached Mr. Carson's office, he stepped out, his expression darkening when he saw them. What's going on here? He barked, his voice cutting through the air like a knife. Maya began, but he interrupted her. I told you to keep the office secure. Who let her in? He yelled, pointing a finger at Sarah. Maya felt her heart race. She has an interview. She was on the list. Get out of my sight. Mr. Carson snapped, glaring at both women. You don't get to make decisions here. Maya felt a surge of adrenaline. She deserves this chance. You can't keep playing favorites and shutting people out just because of who they are. For a moment, the room fell silent. Mr. Carson's face flushed with rage, and the tension was palpable. You think you can talk to me like that? You're walking a thin line, Maya. One more word, and I'll have you out of here faster than you can say promotion. Maya's heart raced, a mixture of fear and defiance coursing through her veins. She felt a sense of purpose rise within her. Maybe it's time someone stood up to you, she said, her voice steady, surprising even herself. Mr. Carson glared at her, his face twisting in fury. You're done. Get out. Maya turned on her heel, adrenaline fueling her steps as she left the office, her mind racing. That confrontation had crossed the line, and she knew there would be consequences. But in that moment, something had shifted within her. She was no longer willing to accept the status quo. Maya felt a fire ignite in her chest, a resolve to fight against the discrimination and injustice she had witnessed. She wouldn't let Mr. Carson's racism define her experience. As she walked through the office, her heart pounding, she knew she needed to take action. There had to be a way to expose the toxic culture at Apex Solutions and stand up for those who had been silenced. It was time to dig deeper, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever felt powerless under the weight of prejudice. Little did Maya know The journey ahead would require more courage than she ever imagined, but she was ready to embrace the fight. The breaking point had arrived, and it was time for change. Maya sat at her desk, her mind racing with thoughts of the confrontation with Mr. Carson. Each moment of the previous day replayed in her head like a looping film reel, and with each playback, she felt her resolve strengthening. This was no longer just about her career. It was about standing up against a system that thrived on racism and discrimination. The office had a tense air the next morning. Rumors of her outburst had circulated like wildfire, and the atmosphere was thick with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Colleagues exchanged knowing glances as Maya walked in, their expressions a blend of admiration and concern. She could sense the unspoken support behind their eyes, a silent acknowledgement that many had felt the same frustration she had but lacked the courage to voice it. Sitting down at her desk, she opened her laptop and prepared to immerse herself in research. If she was going to challenge the toxic culture at Apex Solutions, she needed to arm herself with information. She began scouring internal documents, company reports, and industry publications, looking for any hint of Mr. Carson's wrongdoings. Maya had learned early on that knowledge was power. She recalled the advice of her mentor, who had taught her to analyze every aspect of a situation before diving in headfirst. She applied that principle now, digging through her notes and organizing her findings. The more she uncovered, the clearer the picture became. Over the next few days, Maya gathered evidence of the company's internal struggles, high turnover rates, employee dissatisfaction, and a lack of diversity in leadership roles. Each discovery fueled her anger further. She meticulously compiled data, documenting instances where employees had been overlooked or treated unfairly because of their race or background. One afternoon, while reviewing performance evaluations, Maya stumbled upon a troubling pattern. She noticed that minority employees consistently received lower ratings than their white counterparts, despite having similar or better qualifications. The disparity was glaring, and it felt like a punch to her gut. As she pieced together the evidence, she felt the weight of responsibility settle upon her shoulders. If she was going to challenge Mr. Carson and expose the systemic issues plaguing Apex Solutions, she would need allies. But whom could she trust in a workplace where fear reigned supreme? After much contemplation, Maya decided to confide in James. He had shown genuine concern for her well-being and seemed to share her frustrations about the company culture. They had developed a camaraderie over shared lunches and conversations about their aspirations, and she hoped he would understand the urgency of her mission. That evening, as they sat together in the break room, she took a deep breath. "James, can I talk to you about something important?" "Sure, what's on your mind?" he replied, leaning forward with interest. "I've been doing some digging into the company's performance reviews and culture," Maya began, her voice steady despite the anxiety bubbling beneath the surface. "And I've found some pretty alarming patterns. I think there's a lot more going on here than meets the eye." James furrowed his brow, a look of concern crossing his face. "What do you mean?" Maya explained her findings, detailing the discrepancies in employee evaluations and the overall lack of diversity in leadership. As she spoke, she could see the realization dawning on him. "Wow," he said, his voice low. "That's disturbing. I've noticed the same thing, but I didn't have the proof. You might be onto something big." Maya felt a surge of hope. "I think we can do something about it. If we band together, maybe we can bring this to light." James nodded slowly. "But we need to be careful. If Carson catches wind of this, he won't hesitate to retaliate. He has a lot of influence in the company." "I know, but I can't just sit back and let this continue. People are suffering because of his behavior, and it's time for a change," Maya replied, her voice firm. James regarded her thoughtfully. "All right, I'm in. But we need a plan. We can't just charge in blindly." Maya smiled, feeling a sense of camaraderie. Together, they could make a difference. "Let's gather more evidence and talk to a few others we can trust. We'll build a case before we approach anyone higher up." With newfound determination, they set to work. Over the next few weeks, Maya and James discreetly spoke with other employees, gathering stories of discrimination and unfair treatment. They learned about colleagues who had been unfairly passed over for promotions, the constant microaggressions that permeated the workplace, and the feeling of hopelessness that lingered in the air. One afternoon, Maya met with Sarah, the woman she had helped gain entry for her interview. After securing a position in the marketing department, Sarah was eager to lend her voice to the cause. "I've heard about what you're doing," Sarah said, her eyes bright with determination. "I want to help. I've seen firsthand how Carson treats people, and it's disgusting." Maya felt a rush of gratitude. "We need people like you on our side. Together, we can amplify our voices and bring attention to this issue." As they strategized, Maya could sense the momentum building. They had created a small coalition of like-minded employees, people who had experienced similar injustices and were willing to stand up for what was right. But as their plan took shape, Maya also felt the gnawing fear of what might happen if they were discovered. Mr. Carson's reputation for retaliation was well known, and she worried about the consequences for herself and her colleagues. One late evening, as Maya sat alone in her cubicle, she received an unexpected message from an anonymous email account. The subject line read, "Important information." Curiosity piqued, she opened the message. It contained detailed information about Apex Solutions' corporate structure, including insights into how promotions were handled and a list of employees who had been dismissed under questionable circumstances. Maya's heart raced as she read through the contents. This was exactly what she needed, proof of the systematic issues that plagued the company. The anonymous sender mentioned a meeting scheduled for the following week with upper management, providing her a chance to present their findings. But there was a catch. The sender warned that Mr. Carson was aware of the brewing discontent among the employees and would be on high alert. "Be careful who you trust," the message concluded ominously. Maya felt a mix of excitement and dread. This could be the opportunity they had been waiting for, but the stakes were higher than ever. She needed to discuss this with James and the rest of their group immediately. The next day, they gathered in a private conference room after hours, tension hanging thick in the air. Maya shared the contents of the email, her voice barely above a whisper as she recounted the details. "We need to act quickly. If we have a chance to present our findings to management, we can finally expose the truth," she urged, her eyes scanning the faces of her colleagues. "But what if Carson finds out?" James asked, concern etched on his features. Maya took a deep breath, trying to project confidence. "If we don't do this now, we'll never get another chance. This is our opportunity to create real change." The group exchanged wary glances, but Maya could see the determination building in their expressions. They were all in this together, ready to fight for their rights and the rights of those who had come before them. "All right, let's do it," Sarah said, her voice firm. "We'll prepare a comprehensive presentation with our findings, and we'll make sure to highlight the experiences of those who have suffered under Carson's management." With a renewed sense of purpose, they spent the next few days crafting their presentation, carefully compiling the evidence and testimonials they had gathered. Maya felt a fire in her belly, knowing they were about to take a stand against the toxic culture that had plagued their workplace for far too long. As the meeting day approached, anxiety swirled within her. What if they were met with resistance? What if Mr. Carson tried to discredit them? But amid the fear, Maya held on to the belief that they were on the right side of history. They were fighting for justice and accountability, and that was worth any risk they faced. On the day of the meeting, Maya donned her most professional outfit, determined to present herself with confidence. She arrived early, her heart pounding, as she entered the conference room where upper management would gather to hear their presentation. As her colleagues trickled in, Maya could sense the nervous energy buzzing in the air. They shared quiet reassurances, each trying to bolster the other's spirits. Finally, the door swung open and the upper management team filed in. Among them was Mr. Carson, his expression a mix of arrogance and annoyance. Maya felt a surge of anger as she met his gaze, but she quickly steeled herself, reminding herself of their purpose. "Thank you all for being here," the head of management began, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a stern demeanor. "We've been informed that you have some concerns about the company's culture. Let's hear what you have to say." Maya stepped forward, her heart racing. She took a deep breath, locking eyes with James and the others for support. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. We believe that Apex Solutions has a significant issue with its corporate culture that is affecting employee morale, productivity, and ultimately, the company's success. As she began to outline their findings, she felt a rush of adrenaline. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. She presented the data they had compiled, highlighting the discrepancies in employee evaluations, the high turnover rates, and the testimonials from colleagues who had faced discrimination under Mr. Carson's management. The room fell silent as she spoke, the weight of their words hanging in the air. She could see the upper management team exchanging glances, their expressions shifting from indifference to concern. But then Mr. Carson interjected, his voice dripping with disdain. This is all hearsay. There's no concrete evidence here. You're just a group of disgruntled employees trying to stir up trouble. Maya felt her blood boil. We have data, Mr. Carson. We have evidence of your management style and its impact on employee performance. This isn't just about us. It's about the future of this company. Enough, he barked, his face turning red. You're crossing a line, Maya. If you think you can come in here and undermine my authority, you have another thing coming. Maya's heart raced, but she refused to back down. This isn't about undermining your authority. This is about creating a better workplace for everyone. If you truly care about Apex Solutions, you'll listen to what we have to say. The tension in the room was palpable, and Maya felt the weight of the moment settle around her. She glanced at her colleagues, who were nodding in silent support. The head of management raised a hand, calling for silence. Let's allow Maya and her team to present their findings without interruption, he said, his voice steady. Maya took a breath, feeling a rush of gratitude for the support of her colleagues and the upper management. With newfound determination, she continued, detailing the stories of employees who had been marginalized and the systemic issues that needed to be addressed. As she spoke, she could sense the tide beginning to turn. The management team leaned in, listening intently, and Maya felt a spark of hope. After their presentation concluded, the head of management addressed the room. Thank you for bringing these issues to our attention. We take this matter seriously, and we will conduct a thorough investigation into your claims. Maya felt a surge of relief wash over her. They had done it. They had taken a stand, and their voices had been heard. As the meeting wrapped up, Maya and her colleagues exchanged glances of triumph. They had faced their fears and fought for justice, and while there was still a long road ahead, this was a crucial step in the right direction. But as they left the conference room, Maya couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The confrontation with Mr. Carson had been intense, and she knew he wouldn't take this lying down. There would be repercussions, and she needed to prepare herself for whatever came next. That night, as she lay in bed, the weight of the day settled around her. Maya couldn't help but wonder what the future held for her and her colleagues. Would they be able to bring about real change, or would they become targets for retaliation? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain: Maya was no longer willing to back down. She would fight for herself, her colleagues, and the future of Apex Solutions. The journey was just beginning, and she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The aftermath of their meeting with upper management left Maya buzzing with a mix of adrenaline and anxiety. As the days passed, she watched as the company began to respond to their presentation. Rumors swirled around the office. Some employees expressed hope that change was finally on the horizon, while others whispered fears of retaliation from Mr. Carson. The tension was palpable, and Maya felt it settle like a heavy fog over the workplace. Despite the uncertainty, Maya was determined to keep the momentum going. She gathered her small group of allies, James, Sarah, and a few others, to brainstorm their next steps. They met during lunch in a quiet conference room, the atmosphere filled with anticipation and urgency. All right, everyone, we need to solidify our plan moving forward, Maya said, standing at the head of the table. We've made some progress, but it's crucial that we keep the pressure on. We can't let this momentum fizzle out. James leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. What do you suggest? We need to be strategic. If Carson finds out we're organizing, It could backfire. Maya nodded, acknowledging his concern. I understand. But we also can't sit back and wait for change to happen. We need to actively push for it. Maybe we can start by gathering more testimonials from employees who have been affected by Carson's management style, Sarah suggested, her voice steady. If we can present a clearer picture of the impact he's had, it might force the company to take more serious action. That's a great idea, Maya replied. The more evidence we have, the harder it will be for them to ignore our claims. They spent the rest of the meeting brainstorming ways to gather testimonials discreetly. Maya felt the excitement build within her as they discussed outreach strategies, each idea fueling their collective determination. After the meeting, Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were moving in the right direction, and with each step, she felt the weight of their shared mission solidifying into something tangible. Over the next week, Maya and her team worked tirelessly. They created anonymous surveys for employees to share their experiences without fear of repercussions. They reached out to colleagues across departments, encouraging them to speak up and share their stories. As the testimonials began to roll in, Maya couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. The courage of her coworkers was inspiring. With every submission, the evidence against Mr. Carson's management practices grew more compelling. But as they gathered more stories, Maya also felt the tension in the office increase. Mr. Carson had clearly become aware of the discontent brewing among employees. He started hovering around the office more often, his demeanor becoming increasingly aggressive. His presence was suffocating, and it sent waves of anxiety rippling through the team. One afternoon, as Maya was sorting through the testimonials, she overheard a conversation between Mr. Carson and another manager, Karen. I don't care what they think. I'm not changing my management style for anyone, Carson said, his voice dripping with contempt. If they can't handle the heat, they can leave. This is a competitive environment. Maya's stomach churned. It was clear that he was not backing down, and that only fueled her determination to press on. That night, she gathered her team for another meeting. The stakes were rising, and they needed to discuss their next move. Listen, I've been thinking, Maya began, her tone serious. We need to take our fight to the next level. If we're going to bring about real change, we need to make our voices louder. We can't just gather testimonials and hope for the best. We need to strategize our approach to upper management. James nodded, a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. What do you have in mind? What if we organize a formal presentation showcasing our findings, but this time we invite more people? Employees from different departments who have been affected by Carson's management style, Maya suggested, her pulse quickening. Sarah chimed in. We could set up a company-wide meeting and make it mandatory for upper management to attend. It'll put pressure on them to address the issue head-on. Maya felt a rush of adrenaline. Exactly. If we can get enough people to participate, it will show upper management that this is a widespread issue that can't be ignored. They spent the rest of the evening crafting a plan. Maya and James would create a compelling presentation to outline their findings, while Sarah and the others would reach out to employees across departments to gauge interest in participating in the meeting. Over the next few days, they worked tirelessly to build excitement among their colleagues. Maya utilized every opportunity to talk to coworkers, encouraging them to join the meeting and share their experiences. The response was overwhelming. Employees began to rally behind the cause, ready to stand together against the toxic culture at Apex Solutions. As the meeting date approached, Maya felt a whirlwind of emotions. The excitement of potentially making a difference was tinged with anxiety about the backlash they might face. The day of the meeting finally arrived, and the conference room was buzzing with anticipation. Employees filled the seats, their expressions a mix of determination and apprehension. Maya stood at the front, flanked by James and Sarah, her heart pounding in her chest. Thank you all for being here, Maya began, her voice steady despite the nerves coursing through her. Today, we're here to address the issues we've been facing at Apex Solutions and to demand accountability for the management practices that have created a toxic work environment. The room fell silent, the gravity of her words hanging in the air. She could see the shared understanding in the eyes of her colleagues, and it fueled her resolve. James stepped forward, presenting the data they had compiled, employee testimonials detailing the impact of Mr. Carson's management style, performance evaluation discrepancies, and the high turnover rates among minority employees. As he spoke, Mina watched the expressions on her colleagues' faces shift from apprehension to anger. They were seeing the evidence laid out before them, and the frustration that had been simmering beneath the surface was now erupting. When James finished, Maya took a deep breath. We cannot allow this to continue. We deserve a workplace where everyone is treated with respect, regardless of their background. It's time for us to stand together and demand change. The room erupted in applause, and Maya felt a surge of hope. This was what they had been fighting for: unity, courage, and the willingness to confront the injustices they had endured. But just as the energy in the room peaked, the door swung open and Mr. Carson stepped inside, his presence casting a shadow over the meeting. What is going on here? He barked, his eyes scanning the crowd with fury. Mina's heart raced, but she held her ground. We're addressing the issues we've been facing under your management, Mr. Carson. We're demanding accountability. Carson's expression twisted into a sneer. You think you can just gather a bunch of disgruntled employees and come at me? You're wasting your time. This is my company, and I run it how I see fit. Maya felt a mix of fear and defiance. This isn't just your company, Carson. It's ours too, and we won't stand for the toxic culture you've created. The room buzzed with tension as the employees exchanged glances, some nodding in agreement with Maya. Carson glared at the crowd, his anger palpable. I suggest you all get back to work. This is an embarrassment. But the employees stood firm, a united front against his intimidation. No more, Sarah shouted, her voice rising above the crowd. We deserve better, and we're not backing down. Maya felt a wave of adrenaline rush through her. They had come too far to let fear dictate their actions. We will not be silenced. We're demanding change, and we will be heard. As the tension reached its peak, Carson's expression shifted. He realized he was losing control of the room. You're making a mistake, he hissed, taking a step back. You think this is going to end well for you? Maya stood tall, feeling the support of her colleagues behind her. We're not afraid of you, Mr. Carson. We're standing up for what's right, and we won't back down. With that, the crowd erupted in cheers, their voices a chorus of defiance. Maya felt tears prick her eyes as she realized the power of unity and the strength that came from standing together. Carson's face darkened, and without another word, he stormed out of the conference room, leaving the employees buzzing with excitement and adrenaline. Let's keep this momentum going, Maya said, her heart racing. We need to rally more support and push for real change within the company. Over the next few days, the energy in the office shifted. More employees began to speak up about their experiences, and the tide was slowly turning. Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing they were on the brink of something significant. But with every victory came the looming threat of retaliation from Mr. Carson. Maya was aware of the risk, and as much as she tried to remain optimistic, a nagging fear lingered in the back of her mind. Then, one evening, as she was wrapping up her work, she received another anonymous email. Her heart raced as she opened it, and the contents sent chills down her spine. The email detailed how Mr. Carson was planning to retaliate against those who had spoken out, suggesting he would start scrutinizing their work and looking for reasons to terminate their employment. Maya felt a mix of anger and fear. They had come so far, but now it seemed like the stakes had risen even higher. She quickly called an emergency meeting with her team to discuss the email and formulate a plan. Gathered in their usual conference room, the atmosphere was charged with tension. We've got a serious situation on our hands, Maya said, her voice steady despite the anxiety simmering beneath the surface. This email indicates that Carson is preparing to retaliate against us. We need to be strategic in how we move forward. James frowned, concern etched on his features. What do you suggest? We can't just let him intimidate us into silence. I agree, Sarah added, but we need to protect ourselves. We can't afford to lose our jobs. Maya nodded, appreciating their input. What if we document everything? Every interaction with Carson, every email, every conversation. If we have a record, it will serve as evidence if he tries to retaliate. That's a solid plan, James said, leaning in. We should also keep encouraging others to share their experiences. The more voices we have, the stronger we become. Maya felt a surge of hope. Exactly. And we should consider reaching out to HR. If we have enough evidence, we can formally file a complaint against Carson. As they discussed their strategies, a sense of determination settled in. They were no longer just a group of disgruntled employees. They were a force to be reckoned with, ready to fight for their rights and the rights of their colleagues. Over the next few weeks, Maya and her team worked diligently to gather evidence and document their experiences. They compiled testimonies from employees across departments, showcasing the systemic issues that had plagued the company for far too long. With every story they collected, Maya felt the weight of their collective struggle and the urgency to push for change. But as the pressure mounted, so did the tension in the office. Mr. Carson became increasingly hostile, watching Maya and her colleagues with a hawkish eye. The atmosphere was suffocating, and Maya could sense the fear among her coworkers. One day, as she was sorting through her notes, James approached her with a worried expression. Maya, have you noticed how Carson is treating everyone? He's been making snide comments and isolating people. It's like he's trying to create an environment of fear. Maya nodded, her stomach twisting at the thought. I've seen it too. He's trying to intimidate us into submission. We can't let him win, James said, determination shining in his eyes. We need to keep pushing forward, no matter what. As the days passed, Maya's resolve only strengthened. They had come too far to let fear dictate their actions. It was time to take their fight to the next level and demand accountability from the company's leadership. Little did Maya know, they were on the brink of a confrontation that would test their resolve and challenge everything they believed in. The fight for justice was just beginning, and she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The atmosphere at Apex Solutions was electric in the days leading up to the company-wide meeting. Tension coiled in the air like a spring, ready to snap at any moment. Employees whispered among themselves, unsure of what to expect, but Maya sensed an undercurrent of hope that hadn't been there before. Her team had worked tirelessly to gather evidence, compile testimonials, and prepare for the confrontation that could change the culture of their workplace forever. As the day of the meeting approached, Maya found herself caught between excitement and anxiety. This was the culmination of everything they had fought for, and the stakes couldn't be higher. She had rallied her colleagues, and now it was time to stand united against Mr. Carson and demand accountability. The morning of the meeting, Maya arrived at the office early, her heart pounding in anticipation. The conference room was set up for the presentation, the large screen displaying their carefully crafted slides, filled with data and testimonials. Each one represented a voice that had been silenced for too long. As employees trickled in, Maya felt a sense of solidarity. They were all there for the same reason: to reclaim their workplace and stand against the discrimination that had festered under Mr. Carson's management. When the clock struck 10, Maya stood at the front of the room, flanked by James and Sarah, her heart racing. The room fell silent as she took a deep breath, looking around at her colleagues. They were ready. Thank you all for being here today. Maya began, her voice steady despite the nerves. We're here to address the toxic culture that has taken root at Apex Solutions and to demand accountability from our leadership. We will not be silenced any longer. James stepped forward, presenting the data they had compiled over the past few weeks. He highlighted the discrepancies in employee evaluations, showcasing how minority employees had consistently received lower ratings than their white counterparts. The room filled with murmurs of disbelief as he shared first-hand accounts of discrimination and bias. Sarah followed up with testimonials, reading aloud the powerful stories of employees who had suffered under Mr. Carson's management. The air grew thick with emotion as colleagues recounted their experiences of being overlooked, marginalized, and belittled. Maya watched as the faces of her colleagues shifted from shock to anger. This was it, the moment they had all been waiting for. They were coming together to demand change, and there was no turning back. Then, just as the energy in the room peaked, the door swung open and Mr. Carson strode in, flanked by a couple of upper management members. His expression was one of disbelief mixed with contempt as he scanned the crowd. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice sharp and dismissive. "A pity party? You think this will change anything?" Maya felt her heart race, but she held her ground. "This isn't a pity party, Mr. Carson. This is about accountability. We're here to stand against the toxic culture you've created." Carson's face twisted in anger. "You think you can just waltz in here with your little band of misfits and challenge me? You're making a grave mistake." Maya took a deep breath, trying to channel her fear into strength. "This isn't just about you or your management style. It's about the future of this company and the well-being of its employees. We deserve better." The tension in the room crackled as Maya stood tall, her colleagues rallying behind her. They had come too far to back down now. "Enough!" Carson shouted, his voice booming through the room. "You don't know what you're doing. This company is mine, and I will run it as I see fit. If you don't like it, there's the door." Maya felt a surge of anger, but she refused to back down. "This isn't just your company, Mr. Carson. It belongs to all of us, and we're not going to let you bully us into submission any longer." As the room filled with murmurs of agreement, Carson's expression darkened. "You're playing with fire, Maya. You think this is going to end well for you." Maya squared her shoulders, determination radiating from her. "You're wrong. We're standing up for what's right, and we're not afraid of the consequences. You can't intimidate us any longer." The atmosphere in the room shifted, the energy transforming from fear to defiance. Employees began to speak up, sharing their own experiences and frustrations, echoing Maya's sentiment. They were tired of the culture of fear that had permeated Apex Solutions, and they were ready to demand change. Seeing the tide turn against him, Carson's face flushed with anger. "I won't tolerate this insubordination. You'll all regret this decision." Maya felt a surge of adrenaline. "If you want to fight, then let's fight. We're not backing down. We're demanding change, and we're going to be heard." The room erupted into applause, employees standing in solidarity with Maya and her team. They had reached a tipping point, and there was no turning back. As the meeting continued, Maya could feel the momentum building. Employees shared their stories, their voices rising in unison against the injustices they had faced. The power of collective action was undeniable, and it felt like the walls of oppression were beginning to crumble. When the meeting finally wrapped up, Maya felt a sense of triumph wash over her. They had confronted Mr. Carson, and their voices had been heard. As she looked around the room, she saw her colleagues standing together, united in their fight for justice. But the battle was far from over. Maya knew that Carson wouldn't take this lying down. They had pushed him into a corner, and she could only imagine the lengths he would go to in order to maintain control. Over the next few days, the atmosphere in the office was charged with uncertainty. Carson had retreated into his office, and the employees felt a mix of hope and anxiety. They were waiting for the inevitable backlash, but in the meantime, they continued to support one another, sharing their stories and standing together. Maya and her team continued to gather evidence and prepare for the next steps. They had reached out to HR to formally file a complaint against Carson, presenting the data and testimonials they had compiled. Then, one afternoon, as Maya was working at her desk, she received a notification on her phone. It was an email from HR requesting a meeting to discuss their findings. Her heart raced as she read the message. This was it, the moment they had been waiting for. But as excitement surged within her, so did the fear of Carson's retaliation. That evening, Maya gathered her team to discuss the upcoming meeting with HR. "This could be a turning point for us," she said, her voice filled with determination. "But we need to be prepared for anything. Carson won't take this lightly." James nodded, concern etched on his face. "We need to stick together. If they try to intimidate us, we have to stand firm." As they strategized, Maya felt a sense of unity wash over them. They were no longer alone in this fight. They had become a collective force, ready to confront the toxic culture at Apex Solutions. The day of the meeting with HR arrived, and Maya felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. They entered the HR office, where a panel of representatives awaited them, their expressions serious and focused. "Thank you for coming in," one of the HR representatives said, motioning for them to take a seat. "We've reviewed your complaints and the evidence you provided, and we take these matters very seriously." Mina felt a surge of hope. "We're here to bring attention to the toxic culture that has developed under Mr. Carson's management. We want to ensure that employees feel safe and valued." The HR representatives nodded, listening intently as Maya and her team presented their findings. They shared testimonials, data, and personal experiences, detailing the impact of Carson's behavior on morale and productivity. After their presentation, the HR representatives exchanged glances, their expressions serious. "We appreciate your bravery in coming forward," one of them said. "We will conduct a thorough investigation and take appropriate action." Maya felt a sense of relief wash over her. They had taken the next step and their voices were being heard. But as they left the HR office, she couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was still ahead. In the days that followed, employees began to notice a shift in the atmosphere at Apex Solutions. The upper management started to engage more with the staff, and there were discussions about implementing new diversity and inclusion initiatives. It felt like change was finally on the horizon, but the specter of Carson still loomed large. Then one morning, as Maya arrived at the office, she noticed a commotion near the entrance. A group of employees had gathered, their expressions tense and concerned. "What's going on?" she asked a colleague who looked grim. Carson was called into an emergency meeting with upper management. "They're discussing his future with the company," the colleague replied, worry etched on their face. Maya's heart raced. This could be the moment they had been waiting for. If Carson was held accountable, it would be a monumental step toward healing the company's culture. As the hours passed, employees whispered among themselves, anticipation hanging thick in the air. Finally, just before lunch, the upper management team emerged from the meeting, their expressions serious but determined. The head of management stepped forward, addressing the gathered employees. "We want to thank all of you for your courage in coming forward. After reviewing the evidence and testimonials, we have made the decision to terminate Mr. Carson's employment with Apex Solutions effective immediately." A cheer erupted from the crowd, and Maya felt tears of relief prick her eyes. They had done it. They had stood up against a culture of fear, and now they were on the path to creating a better workplace. As the celebration unfolded, Maya looked around at her colleagues, their faces filled with hope and determination. They had fought for change, and together, they had succeeded. In the weeks that followed, the atmosphere at Apex Solutions transformed. Upper management began implementing new policies focused on diversity, inclusion, and employee well-being. They held open forums for employees to voice their concerns and suggestions, fostering a sense of community that had long been absent. Maya felt a renewed sense of purpose as she watched the company evolve. She had fought for justice, not just for herself, but for everyone who had been marginalized. The fight had not been easy, but it had been worth it. As she sat in the break room one afternoon, reflecting on their journey, Maya realized that the battle against discrimination was far from over. There would always be challenges, but she was ready to face them head on. With her colleagues by her side, she felt unstoppable. They had proven that their voices mattered, and together, they could create lasting change. As the sun set on another day at Apex Solutions, Maya smiled, knowing that they had forged a new path forward. A path built on respect, equality, and the unwavering belief that everyone deserved to be heard. And as she looked around the faces of her colleagues, she knew that this was only the beginning. Together, they would continue to stand up against injustice and fight for a workplace where everyone felt valued and empowered. The journey was just beginning, but Maya felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. They had turned the tide, and with unity and determination, they would continue to rise. This was their victory, and it would resonate far beyond the walls of Apex Solutions, a testament to the power of standing together against adversity. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story of Maya's journey against workplace injustice and found it inspiring, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps us create more content like this and spread awareness about important issues. Be sure to share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you. If you want to keep up with our latest stories and insights, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Together, we can continue to share powerful narratives and inspire change. Thanks again for being part of our community.